What if the single most dangerous thing you could do for your health after 70 had nothing to do with what you eat, how much you exercise, or what pills you take? The U.S. Surgeon General just confirmed it causes the same biological damage as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And in Okinawa, Japan, the place with more people over 100 than almost anywhere on Earth, they have had the antidote for centuries. It costs nothing. You can't buy it. And at the end of this video, I'll show you exactly how they've structured it into their daily lives since childhood, and how you can rebuild it starting this week. Ushi Okushima was 103 years old, and she was carrying groceries, not being helped with groceries, not sitting near groceries, carrying them up a hill in the morning heat of Ogimi Village in the northern highlands of Okinawa. She had been bagging fruit at the local market since before most Americans alive today were born. She had never used a cane. She had no plans to start. Ushi is not exceptional in Okinawa. She is average. That is the point. Now think about someone you know at 65, not unhealthy, careful even, takes the supplements, watches the sodium, has the gym membership, and still probably can't walk a steep hill without stopping to catch a breath. Still dealing with the kind of low-level inflammation that makes the mornings hard and the evenings exhausting. The gap between those two lives, between Ushi at 103 on that hill and the average Western adult at 65, is not explained by genetics. The Okinawa Centenarian Study, the world's longest-running centenarian study, followed over 1,000 people past the age of 100 across more than 4 decades. Backed by the Japanese Ministry of Health, led by Dr. Makoto Suzuki, and later joined by researchers from the University of Hawaii, the study is definitive on one point. 80% of longevity is lifestyle and environment. Genes account for roughly 20%. So the question isn't whether Ushi is lucky. The question is what she is doing that we have stopped doing. And I'll tell you the one practice at the center of it, the thing that surprised the researchers most, the thing that doesn't look like a health practice at all. You'll want to stay for that, because it changes the way you think about the last decades of your life. Before Western fast food arrived in Okinawa in the 1960s, older Okinawans had roughly 1/5 the rate of heart disease, 1/4 the rate of breast and prostate cancer, and 1/3 less dementia than age-matched Americans. These aren't small differences. These are civilizational differences. And the gap was not closing because Americans were aging poorly. It was opening because Okinawans were doing something structurally different. You've been told the answer is diet, and diet matters. I'll get to the purple sweet potato in a moment, because what it does to inflammation at the cellular level is remarkable. But diet alone does not explain the gap. Because when Okinawans move away, when they leave the island and adopt a Western lifestyle, they lose the advantage within a generation. The practice doesn't travel with the passport. Something about the way they live, not just what they eat, is doing the protecting. Here's where the Western approach breaks down. We have built an entire longevity industry around individual optimization, the global anti-aging market, supplements, cold plunges, hormone therapies, wearables, is on track to pass $90 billion by 2028. $90 billion. And in that same period, U.S. life expectancy has actually declined. We are spending more on living longer and dying sooner. Something is structurally wrong with the framework. And the Okinawans, who spend almost nothing on biohacking, are still outpacing us. The answer has to be somewhere we are not looking. Let me start with the food, because understanding the biology here makes the rest of the picture click into place. The foundational food in the traditional Okinawan diet is not rice, it's not fish. It's something called beni imo, the Okinawan purple sweet potato. Before the 1960s, this one food made up 67% of daily caloric intake for rural Okinawans, not as a side dish, as the meal. Ushi grew them in her garden. She ate them steamed, whole, the way her mother did, and her grandmother before that. The color is the mechanism. That deep, vivid purple comes from compounds called anthocyanins, specifically cyanidins and peonidins. A 2019 analysis published in the journal Molecules confirmed that purple sweet potato anthocyanins are among the most potent free radical scavengers in the food supply. They don't just reduce inflammation, they protect liver function, lower blood glucose response, and shield cellular DNA from the kind of oxidative damage that accumulates over decades and eventually expresses as cancer, cardiovascular disease, and cognitive decline. The glycemic index of beni imo sits around 55, low to medium, because of its high fiber content. It does not spike blood sugar the way white rice or processed bread does, which means no insulin surge, no inflammatory cascade, no energy crash 2 hours later, just a slow, steady release of fuel. If you want to bring this practice into your kitchen, you're looking for Okinawan sweet potatoes, beige skin, purple flesh, at Whole Foods, H-Mart, or Asian grocery stores. Stokes purple is the most common American variety. Wash it, pierce it with a fork, and steam or bake it whole at 350 degrees for 45 to 60 minutes. No sugar, no butter, no frying. That is how Ushi ate it. That is how her village ate it. The preparation is the point. The whole slow-cooked form preserves the anthocyanins that processing destroys. A week's supply runs about $12 to $15. The average American spends more than that on a single bottle of turmeric capsules that delivers a fraction of the anti-inflammatory effect. That's the foundation. But the purple sweet potato explains maybe 40% of what's happening in Okinawa. The rest of the picture requires understanding something that runs deeper than diet, something the researchers almost missed. There is a practice in Okinawa called Hara Hachi Bu. It translates roughly to eat until you are 80% full. Okinawans learn this phrase as children. It becomes reflexive, a cultural governor on caloric intake that requires no willpower, no calorie counting, no app. You eat with your social group, and the conversation, the pace of the meal, the shared rhythm of stopping signals your body before the discomfort of fullness arrives. Hara Hachi Bu isn't about deprivation, it's about structure. Research from the Okinawa Centenarian Study found that the typical elder Okinawan consumed between 1,700 and 1,900 calories per day, significantly below the average Western intake of 2,200 to 2,500, while maintaining lean muscle mass well into their 80s and 90s. Caloric restriction, when it's culturally embedded rather than individually enforced, does not feel like restriction at all. The contrast here is vivid. Picture the average American at the dinner table, alone or half-watching television, eating past full without noticing because there are no social cues to slow down. Now picture Ushi at her kitchen table with her 4 closest friends, conversation threading through the meal, no one rushing, everyone eating at the same unhurried pace. Same food, structurally different experience. The biology responds differently to those two scenarios. Americans spend roughly $154 billion a year in costs tied to the health effects of social isolation, absenteeism, medical utilization, reduced productivity. The Okinawan solution to loneliness cost nothing and has been running for centuries. And now I want to tell you about the practice I promised you at the beginning, the one the researchers almost dismissed because it seemed too simple to be the answer. When the researchers compiling the Okinawa Centenarian Study were cross-referencing variables, diet, activity, sleep, genetics, they kept encountering something that didn't fit neatly into a biological category, a social structure, a specific formalized kind of friendship group called a Moai. They almost dropped it from the analysis. It seemed like a cultural detail, not a health variable. They included it anyway. It explained more than any single food. A Moai, the word translates as meeting for a common purpose, is a lifelong social support group, traditionally 5 people, often formed in childhood and maintained into the hundreds. Ushi had one. She met with her 4 closest friends nearly every afternoon to drink mugwort tea, share a meal, and talk. About nothing important, about everything. If one of them didn't show up, the others went to find her, not out of obligation, out of something closer to the biological certainty that the group's survival depended on each member's presence. And it turns out, biologically, it does. Here is the mechanism. Chronic social isolation, not sadness, not loneliness as a feeling, but the structural absence of close, reliable social bonds, triggers the amygdala to keep the sympathetic nervous system in a continuous low-grade state of alert. The body reads isolation as danger. Cortisol levels rise. Chronically elevated cortisol ravages vascular tissue, suppresses immune function, and literally shrinks the hippocampus, the brain region most associated with memory and cognitive resilience. The inflammation driven by social isolation is not metaphorical. It is measurable in blood panels. The 2023 U.S. Surgeon General's Advisory on Loneliness confirmed that social isolation increases the risk of heart disease by 29%, stroke by 32%, and dementia in older adults by 50%. a landmark meta-analysis published in PLOS Medicine by researchers at Brigham Young University, 308,149 participants across 148 studies, found that lacking strong social connections increases the risk of premature death by 50%, the equivalent mortality risk of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. A Moai is the antidote to that biology. When you know, with certainty, that 4 people are expecting you tomorrow afternoon, that if you don't appear, someone will come looking, your amygdala receives a signal it cannot receive any other way. You are not alone. You are not a threat to yourself. You are safe. Cortisol drops. Inflammation recedes. The hippocampus is protected. Ushi's heart is protected. Her memory is protected. Not by a supplement, by 4 women who show up every afternoon and would notice if she didn't. Think about the last month of your life. How many times did you have a face-to-face conversation with a close friend that lasted more than an hour? Not a text, not a call. Sitting together, unhurried, sharing a meal or a cup of tea. If the answer is not often, that is a biological data point, not a social preference. And it is changeable. Here is what the complete picture looks like, and how the changes accumulate. You bring Benny Emo into your diet this week. $12 to $15 at an Asian grocery store. You bake it whole, eat it in place of the processed bread or the white rice, and you repeat it consistently. The anthocyanins start reducing systemic inflammation within days. You may not feel it yet, but your HSCRP, your high-sensitivity C-reactive protein, is already shifting. In the first week, most people notice something quiet. Digestion settles. Afternoon energy stabilizes. The blood sugar spikes that create the post-meal fog begin to flatten. You pair it with Hara Hachi Bu. Not as a rule you enforce, but as a practice you try. Slow the meal. Eat with someone when you can. Stop before fullness arrives. By the end of the first month, appetite begins to recalibrate on its own. The cravings that felt urgent lose some of their urgency. The system is stabilizing. At 90 days, ask your doctor for 2 specific markers: HSCRP, to measure whole body inflammation, and HbA1c, your 3-month blood sugar average. These are the numbers that tell you whether the metabolic environment in your body is trending toward longevity or away from it. Most people who follow this protocol consistently see meaningful movement by the 90-day mark. And then the Moai. Start smaller than you think necessary. 1 person. A standing weekly commitment, not a plan you'll make when things settle down, but a recurring, reliable presence in each other's lives. Let it grow to 3 people, then 5. The structure is the practice. Ushi's Moai wasn't remarkable because of who the women were. It was remarkable because they showed up every afternoon for decades. At 6 months, the researchers who have tracked Blue Zone migrants, Okinawans who left the island and adopted Western lifestyles, show that the longevity advantage disappears within a generation. But the reverse is also true. People who adopt these practices, regardless of where they were born, begin to move toward the biology of the populations who practice them. This isn't destiny. This is practice. Ushi Okushima carried her groceries up that hill in Ogimi Village until she was past 100 years old. She ate her purple sweet potatoes. She observed Hara Hachi Bu at every meal. And every afternoon, she sat with the same 4 women she had known since childhood, drank her mugwort tea, and talked about nothing in particular. That, the researchers found, was the system. Not a supplement stack, not a biohacking protocol. A sweet potato, a table, and 5 people who would notice if you weren't there. Tonight, find an Asian grocery store near you and look for Okinawan sweet potatoes. That's tier 1, day 1. And then, this week, text 1 person you've been meaning to see. Make it recurring. Make it a standing commitment. You won't notice the biology shifting, but it will be. Every week on this channel, we go this deep. Real research, real protocols, the complete picture from the world's longest-lived populations. If this is the kind of content you want to keep finding, subscribe, and you won't miss a single one. And I want to know, do you have a Moai? A group of friends you see face-to-face regularly that would notice if you went quiet? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and your answer shapes what we cover next.